We talk about the Daleks, the Cybermen, everybody, even Michael Grade. But the arch enemy of Doctor Who, every fan needs to know, Simon, is go on, tell us about this.
Oh, we used to call it the fish fryer.
Simon saved the Kinder transmission here.
Somebody in the control room thought that Cyberman wasn't groaning enough.
Behind the scenes people, out of passion, the goodness of their heart, are colorizing episodes that were lost to color, basically.
Yep.
The fish
Yep.
fryer. And you say we've done it. Ambassador of Death, Terror of the Autons, here you go. The BBC statement to you. Yeah, the BBC statement to you is there's no money in it, there's no interest.
It delights me more than I can say. I mean, to be so astonishingly right about something that everybody said was completely hopeless and pointless.
Hello, welcome to our mini-series, The Magic of Doctor Who. Well, you know the score now. Magic of Doctor Who. In some way, how has it touched your life? How have you touched its life? It can go two ways on this one. It's a fascinating dig into that, and today's no difference as we chat with Simon Anthony, known on our panel as the contrarian, often my polar opposite in a debate, and that's always welcome. But today we'll be on the same side, sharing our love of Doctor Who and how it's touched us. So I think I should actually introduce him as you know him, first of all. Well, hello, Simon, the contrarian. Good to see you.
Hello there. I presume you can hear me. There's
Yeah.
a thing that we used to say in videotape. It's all right leaving me. So if it goes wrong, it's your fault.
Okay, I'll take that. Today we're not going to argue. We're going to share our love of Doctor Who and other things.
Absolutely.
So, just to kind of quickly introduce this, because there's some interesting discussion to have, and of course, we're going to lace it with Doctor Who, everybody. Obviously, in a nutshell, Simon was a videotape engineer and then moved on. Caves of TV Centre, he might want to call this, because he lived in TV Centre like a little Morlock under the ground. He's going to tell us all about this. So, he has touched Doctor Who in many ways, and it's touched him. But I think we need to start, Simon, with this one. It's a very serious one. Every Doctor Who fan weeps about this.
Oh, yes.
We talk about the Daleks, the Cybermen, everybody, even Michael Grade. But the arch enemy of Doctor Who, every fan needs to know, Simon, is go on, tell us about this.
Oh, we used to call it the fish fryer. This is the machine that wiped the original electronic tapes. This is why there were films that had to be, were burnt and jumped on. They were copies of the tapes which were destroyed by this very machine.
That very machine will have killed stories like, or just make us cry.
Well, yeah, most of Dixon Dog Green, but 87 episodes of William Hartnell and great lumps of Patrick Troughton, which are being recovered by good old Ian Levine, as aforementioned. But you can't get back to what it was like before this machine destroyed them.
Yes, that is the real war machine. That is the real killer. That little blooming fish fryer there.
It is.
But the other thing
And
is,
it was the
obviously,
cost. The tapes were really, really expensive, and poor old BBC was not exactly rolling in money.
no.
So you can understand it.
This is
And
all
they've
about
made the
shelf
films
space,
of
and
them.
we've all had that moment when we lived at home, and our mum said, "Are you keeping all those books? Are you keeping all that junk?" And you have to get. But the serious point regarding Doctor Who is obviously my confusion as a Doctor Who fan is you hear the stories. You know, Ian Levine tells the story that he saved the Daleks from being burnt. Now, burnt, and I don't understand when you said that's the fish fryer. So can you explain my confusion there?
Ah. Well, what he burnt or saw off as afraid of was the films, the film recordings, the FRs, which were copies of the original electronic version that was recorded in the television studios at Lime Grove and subsequently Television Centre on quadruplex VT, videotape, electronic, magnetic, a 2-inch wide tape. And that machine there is a magnetic eraser, a degausser, and
Oh.
it took all the magnetic uh, arrangement that was Doctor Who off and left it free so that it could be used by somebody else for something else, probably sport.
It's got some great names for a Doctor Who monster. The fish fryer, the degausser. I mean, whoa, it
Oh
sounds vicious.
yes. Oh,
Um,
it is. Yes, it would kill your watch if it was a mechanical one. It was anywhere near the thing. The
now,
power that came off that was a lot.
now
And
before
it
you
made
were
a
any,
horrible
bef-
hum.
now before you were BBC, you were just a normal person. But your touching of Doctor Who, I understand, was enemy of the world. And you tell me, way back, um, Season 5, Troughton First 625, The Enemy of the World, which began its broadcast on the 23rd of December 1967 as part of Season 5. I saw the titles made, you said.
Indeed, I did. And I didn't realize I'd seen that. My father, as probably everybody knows now, worked in Telecentre and occasionally worked on Doctor Who. And he um, it's gone from my mind which episodes he worked on, but you can see from the Internet Movie Database by looking up Chick Anthony. There's a huge pile of the things. He made about 10 things, about 4 William Hartnells, which he didn't get a credit for, and a pile of t'others. But because he worked there, it was bring your son in and annoy everybody day at Telecentre. And I came in and went into one of the control rooms by one of the studios. I've no idea which. And there was this huge camera, as in gigantic, about the size of a big thing, sitting on a table pointing at a monitor. And he had a very large torch, which he shone onto the monitor, and there was video feedback. And that was what was triggered. So what we see in that is actually the light from a massive ever-ready hand torch going backwards and forwards, round and round through the thing in the vision control suite. And I sort of thought, wow, that's very pretty. And then about 10 years later, I thought, oh, yes, that's what it was. So that was my first behind the scenes experience of Doctor Who. Apart from, of course, knowing that it was coming because my dad did it.
Yeah, well, there you go, everybody. So we've seen the real enemy of Doctor Who already. You're getting your money's worth here, and there's his first claim. He saw it behind the scenes. Now let's get into your main. When you were in the BBC and you were starting to dabble with a bit of Doctor Who as well as other stuff, let me just introduce everybody to various shows you've been on. So you wanted to say you and Five Doctors?
Well, this was a shot from the Five Doctors. There's the Richard Hurndall Doctor on the left, and there's Tegan Jovanka on the right, doing their thing. And this was a shot, and that's another shot that I recorded on VR 1200 machines that you may have a pretty picture of. And it's got lots and lots of knobs on it, and 2-inch tape and thick and everything. You needed to be an engineer to make it work.
Mm.
And it was my job that day to record Doctor Who in a two-machine record room. There was a room about half the size of a bedroom with sliding concertina walls and a big window on one side. I went in and there was John Nathan Turner. I thought, and he was there. I have no idea why he wanted to be there for a very standard and very short studio recording, and I never found out. But he stayed there. I'll just weld this back in position. And uh, well, I set up the machines. We used to have we were given 45 minutes to line up one machine to make sure that it would replay. You'd probably need slightly longer to work out if it would record.
So was it unusual for the producer to be sat with you for anything?
Well, it never happened again. Occasionally people would sort of wander in and say things like, "Hello, we're going to do news night tonight. Please don't go
Mm.
on strike again." That
Yeah.
was fun. But and we get sporting heroes coming down to look at the way that a grandstand was made. I say sporting heroes because I don't actually know who they were because I'm not a
So does he?
sporty person.
So does it
But so it
when?
was totally unexpected, and I had no idea why I came.
So what? He just plonked himself in the background just to. I mean, because by that stage he'd been a producer a while, so it's not as if he's learning a new skill or anything. It's not. I mean, it wasn't a key scene in that way, was it?
No, completely unreasonable for him to be there. I was touched that he was. But that didn't. I did something that he really liked. I did the lineup, which you give him 45 minutes per machine to do, and I did it in 15 minutes. And I looked at the pictures and thought, these are rubbish. I don't want to do that. I'm going to have to change the head. And
Mm.
in one of the pictures you've got, there is a shot of the head drum assembly, which has got a case that closes down over a rapidly rotating head, which has got four head drum, which has got four heads on it. And the case was there to stop bits flying off and blinding you, which they could do, which is, I never actually knew a head explode, but it was there for a very good reason.
Mm.
Um,
So,
and so I took it, I took the head drum off and stuck it, stick it in another one, fired it up, and it worked. And there we are. You cannot see 20 horizontal lines on these pictures, which you would have done if I hadn't changed the head drive. And he
so,
was delighted.
so you've got the whole five doctors, which I think was about what I did is roughly about 90 minutes. So you did the scene with the entry coder.
Yep,
Um, did you do anything
on
else?
one day,
Yeah, yeah.
not that day.
So
No, that scene was
is
this
that
scene.
is it that crazy that you? I assumed stupidly that you might have been, for example, like that as a job, you do the job for the whole project of that program. So no, you just did a scene that day.
No. Yeah, yeah, you have no idea what you're going to work on. Although JNT did say he was so impressed by me, he wanted me to be on everything from then on. But seeing as how that never happened like that, it didn't
No,
happen like
also
that.
our first example of over promising it.
Yeah, sadness, sadness.
Wait,
But
and
this scene that we got there
yeah.
was shot, I can't remember when, but at another time.
Well, you've got two massive different ones there. I mean, one is that you got your first sight of Richard Hurndall playing the first Doctor with Janet Fielding. Now, when you're doing your job, I know you're focused on your job and you've got a blooming producer sat behind you, which is a bit of intimidation. But I mean, obviously you're
He was
watching
short, he
Doctor
didn't
Who.
intimidate me.
But you've
Yeah,
got
oh,
a bit
well,
of Doctor Who
yes.
there. What were you thinking? Because to be honest, when I first saw this scene with the entry coder, I did think, oh my gosh, we're trying to do Return of the Jedi when R2D2 and C3PO arrive at Jabba the Hutt's palace and there's this massive door. And so, Doctor Who always tries to big itself up, always tries to emulate. And that door there and the angle, I thought, oh my gosh, we're trying to do Jabba the Hutt's palace. I mean,
I had not seen Star Wars at that time. It didn't occur to me that there was any possibility.
now I know you've said to me, you've watched Doctor Who in the 60s and stuff like that, but did what did you think when you saw Richard Hurndall's performance in this shot, and of course when you did the other shot?
I was quite pleased. I was well happy. He got on well with everybody else. He knew his lines. He didn't argue with anybody. Whereas John and Patrick did. I think that was playing to the audience rather, but that was funny. No, it was good to see it sort of happen, and I thought, oh yes, I'm in there. I'm actually doing some
Are
proper
you
Doctor Who. Yeah.
and and when we call you a videotape engineer, are you editing shots within that videotape? Are
Ah,
you
no, that's another job. That's videotape editor, you see,
so
and I
does
became
it,
one of those later.
so when you're just kind of when what's the word? Are you restoring this to get rid of lines and stuff? Is or purifying or cleaning it? What
Mm,
you
I'm making sure that the recording worked, because the equipment in those days, as you see in the pictures, was massive and mechanical and had racks and racks of controls, electronic controls that are there. Some of the machines I used had only recently been converted from running with valves.
yeah.
You know the difference between a valve and a transistor. These transistors were only slightly smaller than valves, and there were a lot of them. The machine used to run on compressed air because it was necessary, as well as electricity. It
Mm,
used the air to suck the tape into a curved shape that the round or the circular head could slice into. Oh well, if it did slice into it, we've got problems. But the play between the tape, the head, and the guide was all mechanically set up, and you had to set that up looking at things like the A scope and various other little things. Look at the RF signal coming off the foreheads to us. You had to be an engineer.
yeah, yeah.
Later on, it got a lot simpler, and with the VPR machines, which you got some pictures of, they were 1-inch tape,
Yeah.
and there were far fewer controls. And so we
Now,
got downgraded to being operators.
well, yes, I understand that. So the next one you've got here, just on the next cab on the rank, is
Oh, yes.
Kinder. So your
Yeah.
involvement with Kinder, or what you can recall?
Well, the business of making sure the recordings was good was a multifaceted one. Every time any engineer or indeed operator looked at a tape, you would make sure it worked properly. There was a thing called a recording report form, a little card that went in the remarkably large boxes, and you would have to write on that any disturbance in the picture that could give rise to problems on transmission. And if it was a particularly big problem, it'd be sent back and it'd be re-recorded or edited, or something would be done.
Oh, you'd be
Um,
popular. You'd be popular if you
oh yeah.
noticed too many. I mean,
Well,
can I
there
ask
is
you one
that.
thing?
Yes.
As a Doctor Who fan, it was quite obvious to me, and that you'll know this, and you can explain it for me. In, for example, the Caves of Androzani, there is a scene at the end of episode 1 when they fire and they're firing guns, and
Yeah.
there's a videotape effect, as in it affects
It's a
the
camera effect.
well, no, that
You're
it's
talking
something that
about
you
the
don't.
lines on the screen as the
Yeah, the
guns go
lines on the
bang.
screen that you can't get rid
Yeah.
of. It's a bit like when your man plays a hairdryer in the other room in the 80s and the screen used to have
Yes.
that. So why could they never get rid of that? What was the effect that was going wrong there?
Well, that was another mechanical issue. On the videotape recorder, mechanically you had to make sure all the four heads were in the same position on replay as they were on record, or the signal coming off the tape would have different frequencies, and therefore the colors would be different, so you'd see the banding. But in the case of microphony, as it was called in the studios with the cameras, it's another mechanical thing. Sound being vibrations in the
Yep.
air,
Yep.
guns make a big bang, they shook the bits in the camera.
Yep.
So the bits in the camera vibrated. You got disturbances on the picture. So
Yeah.
a very clever computer could probably line by line fix that these days. In fact, I've no doubt they could. But that is a very recent technology that could be stuck on. With Kinder, it was another issue. It wasn't a mechanical thing, it was a vision mixer thing. And what happened in Kinder was the Mara is caught in the middle of these mirrors, and there's a blinding flash, and it gets zapped. The problem was a blinding flash happened to be more than 0.7 volts, which was the amount of video level that you can have on a tape. There's the flash, yeah.
Yeah.
And I noticed that when the flash came up, it confused the machine that was replaying the tape so much that it thought it was the sync signals that are used for keeping the head locked to the incoming thing. The picture would break up and roll. It would lose lock. And the pictures would go and everything would be terrible. The sound might wow, and you can't have that. And so I wrote on the recording report form because I had reviewed this tape. I was shown it in order to check everything was all right before transmission. And so I did that. And I found the problem. I logged on the recording report form where the problem was, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. It was recorded on AVR2s. Well, I did the review on an AVR2, and in those days, that's a cut down, cheaper, newer version of the other Ampex machines, the ones with thousands of buttons. These had a lot of buttons, but not quite as many.
Yeah.
So we were still engineers then. And I was in the transmission suite transmitting this Doctor Who episode. And I looked at the recording report form, and it did not show anything had been done about the problem. What do you do? I know the machine's going to offlock when that happens, but I knew when the scene it happens. So I ran from the control room into the machine area and used one of those multiple knobs on the machine. And as the big flash happened, I turned down the gain, the video, watching the level on the I can't think of it. Oscilloscope. No, the scanners to see this. What on earth can't I? It was called an A-scope. And when the flash went, I turned it back up to where it should have been. And so the machine did not offlock. And the
So,
doctor saved
so when it
himself.
was being,
All was good.
so when it was being broadcast, you then did a
Yep.
last minute intervention.
I was kneeling at the machine, tweaking the knobs on air. Yes.
So let me get this right. So, you see, it's the understanding of a program. You got this idea. I remember when the Dallas tape, Who Shot JR, and they flew it from America, and they showed you the thing. But I always thought you'd locked it in, like the producer has final say, a bit like a RTD has the final say and says, right, we've locked in the effects, we've locked in it, that's it. Now,
Yep.
you've seen this, they haven't picked up what you've pointed out. You know it's going to transmission, but I thought that's beyond interference. I mean, so when it's getting transmitted, you intervened to just improve this.
Well, I intervened to stop there being a technical fault, which would have caused stress throughout the transmission line. The pictures would have broken up, people would have noticed, and technologically would have been struck something chronic. But because I tweaked it, nobody knew I did it anyway.
So what we can see here is there was the Mara, that terrible effect of that slow motion of the Mara. But then your intervention did what? And what would it go on? What would it have looked like if you hadn't intervened? And
Well, in your little clip of me at the beginning, you've got the picture breaking up to something else. And you get the bars rolling through and shash and stuff. It would look a bit like that. And there'd be a
right.
horizontal black line would go across the screen, and the all machines in the transmission sync were looked up to the the the, the I can't remember the proper terms. Basically, every television program in those days was a series of still pictures separated by a short space, and you'd see 50 of those a second.
Yeah.
And they the bits in between were sync pulses, and the sync pulses made the picture lock up properly, made the machines lock up properly, and made sure that you could do a synchronous wipe. You could actually introduce one show to the next one without the pictures breaking up.
Right.
There's a video of the very first transmission of videotape of the machine called Vera, and you may have that there. It was the relevance is the Vera machine was not synchronized to the studio that was doing the live program, and when you cut to the Vera signals, the picture rolled. It broke up.
Right.
That was because of that. That was
Right.
the gen lock wasn't working. The
So
general sync lock,
so there we go.
and the same problem would go wrong there.
So we're getting snippets here on Doctor Who and various sins. So Simon saved the Kinder transmission here. Some would argue you could. No, I'm only kidding. Next one on the lot then. This one is
Oh
Earthshock.
yeah,
Yeah.
this is Earthshock, yes. And this was so Earthshock. That was 8th of March '92. That was right. Yeah, that was not particularly long after the Mara experience. He said, checking his notes. And with this, I recorded quite a lot more stuff. I think I was recording on quads. Quadruplex VTRs machines with 4 heads on a disc that ran, rather than 1-inch machines. The quads were 2-inch. Anyway, it was running. The technology is not relevant in this. The acting was. What you saw first with that Cyberman was the cyber leader who had been shot, who was dragging himself up the across the set to try and stop Adric doing his bit to save the world. And he went across. This is multimeter there, and he wandered up and shouted at Adric and shot him. And that computer that you see his fingers hovering over exploded with a colossal whack and scared Matthew Waterhouse to death. I mean, as it rightly should. It was a massive bang. Here you can see he knows it's going to happen, and he's standing as far away from it as he possibly can and pecking at it with his fingers. Now, the
Yes.
reason there was a second take was because the producer or the director or somebody in the control room thought that Cyberman wasn't groaning enough.
Oh
So
no.
he overacted something chronic, came up, and here we have the highly tentative prodding of a machine, which you can just about see is somewhat scorched already. And that was that story.
I
But
mean,
there was more, of course.
well, just on this one, I mean, I remember you told us on one of our streams a little bit of this. So the actor playing the Cyberman, and remember, let's be honest, a Cyberman isn't supposed to show much emotion. So the director says, "I want more moaning and groaning," which
Yes.
mucks up the scene for poor Matthew, because now he has to be very delicate that his cuticles don't get wrecked.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes, and his eyebrows burnt off, and it really was a big flash.
You said there was other stuff with the Earthshock as well.
Well, yes. I mean, I shall just throw in the point that there was no gold in his badge. So he couldn't possibly have done anything to the bloke. They had 2 badges. This one fell apart into thousands of fragments,
Aye.
and another one they broke up into a few fragments and put onto the closing title sequence. There we go. Completely different, you see. Now, I noticed there was no sound. And it was my job to make comments about this. So I phoned the control room and said, "Excuse me, there's no sound coming down here. Can we go again?" He said, "No, it's supposed to be like that." Oh, all right. And that was it. That was the silence of the closing titles. And at that point, I sort of realised, maybe this is Goodbye Matthew. I didn't tell anybody. But I'm telling everybody now and have been for some years. But this was a spoiler issue that never got out.
The thing
So
is, Simon,
the massive death.
the amount of I mean, yes, you worked that out with the lack of volume at the end, but I assume in those days you haven't got these ridiculous kind of disclaimer contracts and everything. Nowadays they have billions of different script
NDAs,
colors,
yes.
and
Yeah.
I mean, you could have
No.
gone home and just blabbed to somebody, couldn't you? I suppose,
I
but
could
well,
have
you
done,
wouldn't.
yes.
I
Well,
suppose
I
people did.
might have done. I mean, it's possible, but this was the time they were making the Christmas tapes. You know, the
Yes.
VT Christmas tapes,
Yeah.
White Powder Christmas, Good King Memorex, those things. Look them up, everybody. They're very funny, but quite rude. I didn't play a part in those, although I was there and everybody's seen in it were my colleagues I was working with. Um, um, I was not a very outgoing chap at the time. Look at that, it's really beaten up, isn't it? Poor lad. Yes, the bang was a lot bigger
Yeah.
the first time. I mean, it doesn't look small then. People
Yes.
got sacked for doing the Christmas tapes. Oh yeah, I mean the guy Dave Rickson, who actually did cartoons, and in which I star in one. Um, you see, I had beard, and so I listened to Radio 3 a lot, and was embarrassed by the things that went on in the Shib Shed, which was the Shibarden offline recording thing, which so you'd make tapes to use for editing purposes. And sometimes people would watch pornographic videos, and I found this somewhat disturbing. So this was a reason I was held as not exactly ridicule, but I didn't join in with the majority of people in that.
Now
So
your
yeah,
next so
you keep your mouth shut because you'd get
yeah,
sacked.
your
And
next one.
when we,
Oh,
yep, oh here
go
we
on,
are.
go on,
Okay, yep.
go on. Sorry, your next one was for to Doomsday. You've got down here.
Yes. I mean, this. What can I say about this? This was an example of the difficulty of doing special effects in a studio. It took forever, absolutely ages, hours to do this little shot. And so many, I mean, the poor actors who had to freeze.
Mm.
Are they really difficult? They'd have to do it time and time again, and they'd have to reset for this long shot with Matthew Waterhouse in his hat. I think he had trouble breathing in it, if I remember correctly. That's just come back to me.
That might have been
So,
deliberate.
well, he complained and something happened. I see what you mean. No. Yeah. This must have happened before Earthshock, mustn't it? But
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah. It was the
um,
first one. It was Davison's first block, actually, wasn't it?
it's a green screen there
Yeah.
where you see the black, and he's running off through it, and the poor actors there all frozen, and they were very good at staying still. I was most impressed, and it just took forever. Every shot was a cut. Every shot was a different recording. You'd run up the machine and they'd say, "Are you running VT?" And I'd go beep, because he didn't talk to them. He just had a buzzer that you would signal. And they said, "Stand by, studio. We're going the thing," and off they go recording, do the scene, and they say, "VT, stop recording." And I go beep. And then I would review the end of the recording to check that it worked. So we had two machines, you see, because quite possibly one of them wouldn't work. So this occasionally happened, but the machines, to my knowledge, only ever broke when there was just one of them, which is most embarrassing. Yeah. And that was when I did an interview for the Underwater Menace DVD, talking about all these subjects. And the machine, the camera went wrong, the chip broke, and only a few moments of the recording lived to see it onto the disc.
Oh
But
my God.
anyway,
Well, I mean, so
every shot was a different recording. So
when
there'd
you
be a 30 seconds gap while the machine fired up, 10 seconds for the head to stabilize. And then they'd go off, there'd be another little gap. And then they'd go off and do the scene. And then they'd stop. And then we'd have to go back and rewind, spool the tape back. I had to look at it, check those. You see, the times would add up. And add up and add up and add up. And it was a slow, tedious, and quite often very dull job working in television.
it looks like, I mean, bless them, they were really trying with this because there was some interesting special effects in Photo Doomsday. But this, as you're saying, so they'd have to freeze, for example. I mean, not in the mid of about to dive, but yeah, I'll get a decent shot and see where. Let's have a look. So, for example, there, yeah, and then
Yeah.
so you then whatever the word is, you kind of go, you lock or you freeze, and then they have to change position and line
Well,
it up.
I wouldn't do any of that with the
No,
quads. Locking is the technical term for the machine is stable. You can record now
yeah.
if
So,
I start acting.
but
Yeah,
then they'd have to move to get everything in line, etc. I mean, this is when
yeah,
people talk about special effects costing a bomb because time.
yes. It was time. It was studio time with every single person, every member of staff who did anything at all on the show is sitting around waiting for this to happen. And that's why it was rushed, and that's why so often things looked a bit rubbish. And it wasn't because we weren't trying. I mean,
Well,
that orange rope
yeah.
that got tangled up in people. It was in the wrong place, and they had to do a retake because the rope was in the wrong place. And hey,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. And the
well, you
dancing, though, oddly, that worked perfectly well.
it
The
was,
machine
it
dancing.
just bored me rigid. I remember I said to you, I taped all the audio. It was in the days I taped every,
Yes,
and all I could hear was them dancing. It was like, this isn't Doctor Who. It was like, obviously they were moving around and that and making
not
faces, but
much.
you don't
Yeah,
see that
they
in the
were up there.
audio.
Well,
Isn't it
mm,
funny though that they had a
yeah.
very bright rope, a cable for this scene, and you're saying that caused merry hell? But if it was black, they might have got away with it.
Well, you might not have noticed, yes, but
Although,
it was they tripped in it. It was physically in the way of the actors.
yeah, I mean, we all know it's a famous shot, the cricket ball. People have said it defies physics, but
Oh,
the
here comes
point
the sun.
it's genius Doctor Who though. It reminds me of Nightmare of Eden and various other ones where they come up with really it's a crazily imaginative idea, but only Doctor Who would do it. And in many ways, I say, good for you, Doctor Who. Just it kind of made
Yes,
logic. It had a
yes.
logic to it.
The odd thing is, I don't remember recording the throwing of the ball. That
Mm,
might have happened in a different setup. I
yeah,
mean, because it took so long to do all of it. I can't remember now. How many years ago was it this happened? Decades.
yeah. You're
Yeah,
42 years. You're talking about So
yeah. I mean, absolutely no way could I at all imagine talking about it to anybody, even in my current ghostly apparition, uh,
yeah,
fading away into
I
the
think I'll be
distance?
kind. You're looking like the White Guardian, but I suppose there was an effect when the Black Guardian got angry and it all went. Yeah, so you could be the Black Guardian. You could be Valentine Dial for all I know.
Uh,
But you were therefore seeing Peter Davison in his first story recorded, and so you were seeing a bit of Peter Davison action, and so again you were seeing a little bit of history. With any, can you remember anything? Thinking because you saw his costume, you saw suddenly it wasn't very Tom Baker; it was very striped cricket. Then you saw the cricket ball. I know you said that was on a different day.
oh,
Any
might have
little
been.
thought?
I can't remember. Yeah,
Any thoughts that you can't remember what you thought at the time seeing this new Doctor?
I was not worried It looked perfectly all right to me.
Yeah.
When I saw Colin Baker's, of course, I mean, the bottom fell out of the cosmos. It was just wrong, and remains so to this day. Although we come to like it, that familiarity, uh, breeding contentment. Um, but no, it didn't worry me at all. I was most impressed to see the actor whose name I cannot remember, all flayed up in green from Softly Softly.
Stratford Johns.
Stratford Johns, thank you. Yes, it was brilliant. It's so imposing and all this.
Yeah,
I
Monarch.
shot several of those things. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, that's right.
Monarch. The Banken. That
Yeah,
was it. Now, now you included these shots in Time Flight.
yeah. Obviously, a different recording session. I think it was recorded on 1-inch machines, so there wasn't much for me to do apart from hit the record button. And so I mentioned this because I spent a lot of time actually just watching the acting because there was nothing for me to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And people didn't like Time Flight. I quite did. It was all right. I had the script. I had a read of the script. There you go. So I mean, that was why it was there because I saw that model shot
Yes.
was not there, but that wheel was.
What? What?
That
What?
was a full wheel.
Come on, you're watching it, which it's a treat. You're ahead of schedule. Nobody else sees it for a bit longer. You said there wasn't much to do on this one, so to speak. So you're watching it. Is that when you start to go, oh my god, what the hell are them strange grey plasmatrons? Why's the master doing some dodgy Oriental impression? Was there any?
Not at all, because I never saw that bit of the script. I saw my little bit, which was the studio set with the white background and the Concorde
So
thing looking there, and
did you
that was it.
see?
And that took hours.
Is my understanding then that if this is a studio block and it was your shift to do Doctor Who that day, so or whatever, however
Yeah.
it worked, so you
Hmm.
just get on with checking all the stuff. You go home that night. Tomorrow you might be doing grandstand or something different.
Yep.
It just jumps. So
Absolutely.
basically,
Yes.
you never saw the chronology of the story. You just saw a block of
Not
filming.
at all. No, no, no. The only time I would see an entire program was if it was a studio recording of a studio performance of a sitcom,
Yeah,
like for example Blackadder.
yeah.
I recorded episode 1, season 1 of Blackadder. So I saw all of that completely coming off. That was an extraordinary thing. It was terrible.
So I get it now. I get it now. When they talk about filming in blocks, you as a
It's not
videotape
film, it's
engineer
videotape.
you were just dealing with blocks of what's
Sections,
been
yes.
recorded. Yeah.
Little scenes, yes, yes. Yeah,
And just
but
checking it's all right.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Didn't even look at the entire tape, just the last sort of 10 seconds, just to check there wasn't a head clog. Because there were 4 heads, as I said. Oh, there's the fish fryer again. There's 4 heads on a thing. Come on, I said, you want to talk to me about this? Want me to talk about
I,
Evesham?
I was going to just say that's got relevance to Doctor Who as well, hasn't it?
It does, yes. This is the BBC Training Centre, Evesham Wood Norton. We very seldom went into that. To the right down the hill were studios. To the left down the hill were Army Nissen huts. Where where we poor engineering people from various groups had to live. It was horrible. I mean,
Mm.
there were holes in the walls which were covered with paper because people had put their fists through. Mm. Anyway, this was where Robot was shot round the down the hill, round the back of something, the green thing. So Tom Baker episode 1, Robot shot there.
So yeah,
Inside, no.
the famous bit with the Action Man tank will have been set up somewhere near those grounds, will it?
Yep.
Simon, before we rattle on any further, I know that you wanted to tell me about Terror of the Autons and colorization.
Yes, well, it wasn't just Terror of the Autons. So we had The Terror of the Autons, Ambassadors of Death, and one other tape which Ian Levine had managed to get from America, but no, from Canada, from a bloke who wanted to watch Doctor Who and had got a Betamax and who had recorded a transmission that had been transmitted on a U-matic from a university just over the border. That U-matic was a 525 colour copy that had been converted from 625 to 525. Now, clever old BBC wiped the 625 masters in the device known as the Fishfire, and we had, though, got film recordings, black and white versions that had been used for selling Doctor Who to countries that didn't have any colour television equipment. And that meant that we had the story was complete, but no colour. Now, the black and white pictures are where the quality of the image is stored. And the colour is really fluffy and awful. Really, you can get away with it. The edges of colour in those days did not have to be finely delineated. You could get away with them being fluffy as long as the black and white was nice and sharp. So me and my friend Keith Hunter, who got the tapes from Ian Levine, thought, how about we try and stick the colour back on the black and white by basically getting a vision mixer, because we didn't have any digital systems. They hadn't been invented, really. There was one called a Quantel 6801P, I think it was called, and we needed that because the shape of the pictures were different. Because the camera that pointed at the television screen when it did the film, the film recording process, cut off the outside of the picture somewhat and bent it a little bit. The process of converting 625 to 525 was one of not only getting the number of lines right, but also the number of pictures per second right. Because in Britain you'd have 25 that was shown sort of twice with alternating lines, and so you get 50 flashes. And in America you had it as 60. Same idea of interlacing. But the colour, as I've explained, was done differently. We did PAL, phase alternate line, and they did NTSA. I can't remember what the numbers meant, but so he had to convert that, and that was done mechanically as well, because digits didn't exist. And the way it was done was by having a very complicated, it looked like a crystal from Doctor Who, with a transducer at one side and another receiver at the other side, and a transducer would vibrate and the signal would bounce around inside and come out the other one. And the maths was done such that 65 would come in and 525 would come out. But anyway, mechanical rubbish. It meant that each photograph, each colour change, each picture change was not a straight click. It turned into a 3-frame mix when you brought it back again. So every time the picture changed, you'd have a smear as it went across. And the speed of the tape was different between one and the other. The physical shape was different, so we had to arrange everything and tweak everything. I only had 2 machines to do this job. And one had the FR black and white on it. The other one had the colour, which I'd taken from a Betamax, which had got the 525 on it, and I converted the Betamax through that mechanical system using time that the BBC had paid for, but I'd lined up quickly so I could do it without anybody noticing. And the nice bloke in the central apparatus room let me, and I copied it onto a 1-inch. So I had 2 1-inch machines, one with the multiple generation fluffy awful color, and the other one with the, as close as we can get it, nice film recording, because we had the actual films at BBC Enterprises at the time, Woodlands, that's right. And we'd copy that onto a tape. I mixed the two together, And lo and behold, it worked. And we had a bloke, I can't remember how, but a bloke called Peter White, who had worked on the Hartnell story, the Toy Master, and he was delighted. He thought, marvelous, fantastic, glorious. He saw it and then he went away, and we thought, oh, things are going to happen. They did. He had a heart attack,
Oh,
which I'm glad to say he recovered from, but it took me a long time to discover that it happened. I phoned the BBC production office and said, look, we can do this. All right, there are some problems. We have to do an edit basically every cut to resynchronize the two pictures and so forth and so on. The bloke fairly patiently let me tell my story and then said, there is no market for Doctor Who. Nobody's interested. Who cares? No money, go away. I fought my case as well as I could. This was on the telephone, and not a flicker of interest. And I was basically roundly told to piss off.
yeah.
And the process of getting those tapes was one which could have got us sacked. Quite easily could have done. And people
Now
had
you
done. A
mentioned
bloke called Jan Vincent Rudsky, I think, was sacked
now
for,
you
for
mentioned
trying to recover the pictures.
you mentioned Terror of the Autons, but you also mentioned Ambassadors of Death. And of course, Ambassadors
Yeah.
of Death we're all interested in now because the season 7 Blu-ray collection's coming out. Now, I've seen some cleaner copy done of the Ambassadors of Death. I've seen a screenshot improvement. So in a way, you were ahead here
Oh,
trying to
yes.
now
Oh, yes,
have
we
they
were very much
used
ahead. But we didn't
are
try
you
using Ambassadors of Death because there was the original recording had got some color cross patterning in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And it just made it look dreadful. There wasn't anything we could do about it. And we did not have the technique. It had not been invented for another 30 years before it could be cleaned up and done these days. I mean, my
so
way of doing it
yeah.
worked, but people would have loved watching it, but it was really not
So
very
let
good.
let me sum this up then. So in God, what roughly what year? I mean, you started there 78. When were you told to stop messing with this?
Somewhere between 85 and 87. I've done
Oh,
my best
oh,
to tie it down. I can't.
yeah. But what you're saying is
After the
when
show was cancelled.
yeah, the BBC really hating on Doctor Who. So what we've got
Absolutely.
here is behind the scenes people out of passion, the goodness of their heart, are colorizing episodes that were lost to color, basically,
Yep.
the fish
Yep.
fryer. And you say, we've done it. Ambassador of Death, Terror of the Autons, here you go. The BBC
Prove the
statement to
system.
you, yeah, the BBC statement to you is there's no money in it, there's no interest. And then Brendan just jumps to 2024, 2025, and the war games in colour, the Daleks in colour. Interesting, isn't it?
It delights me more than I can say. I mean, to be so astonishingly right about something that everybody said was completely hopeless and pointless gives me the evidence to sort of trust my heart, shall we say. I mean, if you know something's right, if you know something's possible, stick with it, and eventually it'll happen. You might not see it, but it will happen. If you're right, it'll happen. Basically, there you go. That's
There you
my hope for
go.
the future, folks.
That's your lesson. Stick with it. You might be ahead of the game. You might just be ahead.
Oh yes.
Yeah. This one you said 1984. The pig on the way home. On the pig on the way and the young
Yes.
ones. What's that story?
Oh well, I used to. Well, I used to cycle into work, but then I took a 207 bus up Uxbridge Road, turned left into Frithville Street, and walked up to the back of Television Centre. It's changed completely now, but there was a gate you'd go through. There was a bloke looking at it. I walked up the hill, and there was a van, and there was a pig. sitting in a thing in the back of the. I thought, what? You don't often see pigs at television centre, at least. No, no. I mean, so I made a mental note of this. Further up on the way into the building, near the scenery block, which
Mm.
is a sort of fairly open area. On previous occasions, I would see lying on the ground the TARDIS in pieces, getting rained on, getting blown about. It was terribly sad. Just, 4 lumps of TARDIS sitting there. And the pig wasn't round at the time, but the pig
Not at
turned
the
out
time.
to be in Young Ones,
Yeah.
in the episode with Bamber Gascoigne, effect person.
Oh, yes, yes, the famous University Challenge one, yes.
Yeah,
So
that was where the pig came from.
so the TARDIS bits, I know you've said, you've listed to me 1985, so was that are they picking those up to go somewhere, or was it just the I mean, what do you think
They were
was
just
going on there?
lying there. They were there for days and days,
Oh, dear, really? Forlorn.
abandoned. Yes, a forlorn, very, very, very forlorn. Yes.
Oh, dear. Oh, I wonder if that
Oh,
I wo
could
well,
have been after it was cancelled. Yes.
what, and they just chuck out the TARDIS prop just to kind of gather mould?
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Why did you list to me the Caves recorded broadcast J&T head optimization change on quads? What was that about?
The head optimization was the course that I had done, which meant that I knew how to change the head block quickly in the recording of the thing we've talked about with it's an entry
Yeah,
coder thing with
to stop the blowing up.
that. It no, to stop the lines showing up on the screen.
Right.
That's because the picture was made up of 4 heads sweeping across the screen, and the 4 heads would make 20 horizontal lines, and each of those horizontal lines was composed of the signal that was picked up from a head as it passed around the circle. So there's 4 of them, every 90-degree rotation there'd be another line come across, and the maths was done up so that the whole thing would fit into 625 lines. Huh. And this is the sort of thing we were taught there. This,
Now,
well, there's me bottom
well,
left again.
there's you, bottom left. There we go. So this is
Yeah.
Simon Anthony. Where were you here? What's happening here, really?
This is taken. Everybody was corralled at the beginning of your course. It was A49 in my case, at the front of the building at Evesham. If you look at the Evesham building, you see the columns. If you look
Yeah,
at robots, you see the columns, you see the doors. This is where we always congregated to have the class photo.
the class photo. I won't say
Yeah.
DEI. I won't say a word.
Yeah, well, you notice there is not a woman there.
No.
But later on, we got women, and they were the best engineers we had. So there, I don't know what. Maybe it's because they had to fight their way to get through. But
Yeah.
when they did, they were really good. Yeah, me and Mike Herbert, left Mike Herbert in the middle there, went off and worked at BBC Enterprises, where most of the women ended up as well.
Now remember,
So that was all right.
There's a 5 doctors story to do with Lonleat that you keep trying to tell me.
Oh right, yes. Now, I am somewhat confused as to the time when this happened, but I was working at BBC Enterprises, and 2 young ladies from the Doctor Who production office came in and said, "We want a tape, a compilation thing of the end of Peter Davison and the beginning of Colin Baker, for show at Longleat. See you later." Huh? What? Oh, okay. He was, I was given the job by my boss. It was Ray Johnson, R.I.P. Nice bloke. Um, so I got my 2 machines. You've got a picture somewhere of 2 VPRs. They were 1-inch tapes. and I just knocked something together. And I've got the tapes. There we are. There's the VPRs. I would sit in between the two of them. That's a telecentre that was set up at can't remember what it was called. Wood something. It's been knocked
Wood
down
Lane.
now,
Wood
which is a
Lane.
shame. No, not Wood Lane. Woodlands. That's right. It was called
Okay.
Woodlands. Yeah. Um, and there was no electronic linking between the machines that I used, apart from the aforementioned synchronization pulses. Now, there's some little red buttons you can't see that are somewhere around the control buttons. And those, I worked out it could press simultaneously. So one with one arm, one with another. You hit them simultaneously. You could get what became known as the Ashcroft Invisible Edit, because a chap called Simon Ashcroft worked out that if you were making a massive recording for absolutely ages and something went wrong, you would have to start again. But if you did this little clever little edit, you could get home earlier. So we did that, and that was one of the skills I used for gluing these bits together. We only had a fader, so it's black and white, maybe. I couldn't mix between the two because I only got two machines, one to record and one to replay.
Yeah.
And so I made it. One was the overacting Dalek, whereas he just screams exterminate for an hour and a half, and then everybody applauds, and then he says, "Oh, thank you," which is
Yes. Yes.
extremely funny.
Yes.
And the other one
Go on. Carry on.
with
God, sorry.
the Hartnell doctor and Susan running down the corridor, and
Yeah.
he screams, "Yes, yes, it's the doctor. He must not escape. Bugger, I've lost him."
Yes. It
Oh,
was so
I fell off the
theatrical.
chair. It was so
Those,
good.
those,
Yes.
those Dalek actors were quite theatrical, weren't they? I
Oh
tell you.
yes. Oh yes. Yes. They were big people in small
Uh,
packets. Yes.
exactly. So, I mean, we've tried to do the link with Doctor Who. However, let's just help everybody out who's interested in this whole kind of setup. So I'm going to just start you from the beginning here. So you were talking about Vera, and this is Vera,
Yes.
isn't it?
Video electronic recording apparatus, I think it was called. And these shots are from an omnibus television program, which astonishingly my father worked on as the sound guy. And this was the first time a videotape recorder had been demonstrated in public live on television. And you see how it looks superficially similar to the ones I've shown you. I mean, it's got
Yeah,
two reels and a lot of
yeah,
things under it, but it does not have the head drum. In this, the spools ran very, very fast indeed to be able to get the head to tape speed up, to be able to get some sort of picture out of it. And the tape was really quite narrow. So the trick with the quadruplex was if you made the tape thicker and then made something run around inside, you could effectively get a long spiral recorded on the tape. But of course, every so often the head would fall off the end of the tape and you had to switch to the first one. And that was why we had to mechanically line the things up and electronically line the stuff up. And on the video, you see there's a non-sync cut between the studio and the pictures coming from the replay machine because they hadn't sorted it out. Now this little picture, that is me. You see his VT school days. We did rather think the place was run like a school. Um, and I had a sort of some sort of a beard, and it wasn't a particularly big one, but I was hairy enough to be noticed, shall we say. And I did not fit in very well with anybody, which was daft. I could have done, but something went wrong. And these cartoons were made by a bloke called Dave Rickson, who was the same chap who, together with, oh dear, I've forgotten again, made the Christmas tapes that I mentioned already.
Yeah.
He apparently got sacked eventually for making the Christmas tapes, which was not good. You know, there's a videotape recording area, there's lots of down there, and lots of silly little jokes and so forth.
Yeah.
And, yes. You've got the shot of the VT control center. That's the one. That at the back there, those cables are plugs. That one end would go to a studio, the other one went to a videotape machine, and you had to make sure you got all the plugs in the right holes, and that was really quite a task. The bloke on the phone was the engineer. The tall guy standing up was the boss.
Yeah.
And I was given some tutelage, shall we say, by a bloke who had considerable faith in his own abilities. And he brought little groups around and showed off how things did. And he came into VT Control when I was working on this. The phone number was 4050, if that rings a bell, somewhere it might. And he showed a group of young wannabes these cables, and he said, and this one you see here, and he pulled it out, and the weather went off air because he just unplugged the videotape machine that was doing the
Because
replay.
because he's a
Right.
boss and he doesn't understand everything. Oh, do you
Correct. Yes, he was a direct entry student from university.
Of
They knew
course.
nothing.
The
I've never been to
BBC and the
university, yes.
yes. Now
No,
you've already shown us
we were
this.
all engineers, young chaps who'd come basically from school. No university at all. So there. Oh, here's our VR 2000s. Lots of knobs, lots of dials.
There you go.
And
And
on the right, you see,
oh,
there we are. On the right, you can see the head drum area, which you can't see on the left because the cowl's over it. And
yeah,
if you go back to the shot of the head drum area, that entire bit comes out, and you can see there's a little but the tape goes along, and there's a barrel you can see, and there's a little bit of aluminium. That's a curved thing, which is the tape guide. And the tape gets sucked into that, literally by a vacuum, to hold the right shape. It was called making a canoe, and it would go across. And you'd have to clean this every time you did anything with a tape. You'd have to get your can of cold clean out and your Kim wipes, and clean the entire
that's why
tape bath,
that's
including
why
the tips. Yeah.
that's why Jnt was sat behind you because he knew with you be doing the Five Doctors, this was your key bit because this was what you used on the Five Doctors, wasn't it?
I took this head drum out because it wasn't behaving properly, and I'd been on a tape optimization, a head optimization job earlier, and I just finished, and so I knew I could do it quickly. Now here on the left is a mechanical edit being done. That thing sticking out on the left-hand side is a microscope. And the microscope was looking at the magnetic tracks lined up on the tape, which were developed by putting a sort of a magnetic a thing on it called eddy view, which would actually show the tracks as they were mechanically positioned on the tape. But you need the magnifying glass to work out exactly where the picture ended. Because if you did just a slice anywhere, it could have made it halfway up the picture. So you had to see where the sink was to be able to do that. So you did it with a razor blade and then glued it together with sellotape and hoped the thing would work. Now, this is a vector scope, and it's rather fuzzy and out of focus, but those should be lots of little dots showing that the phase of the signal coming off the color burst on the 625 line pictures in PAL, phase alternate lines it was called, or pale and lurid if you're American. And if you're British, they used NTSC, which we called never twice the same color, because they used a different system for sorting the colors out. And we had to arrange the phase controls, which you see in the pull down bottom on this AVR2, to make sure the colors are right, or there'd be fading. On a 525 machine, if the colours are wrong, they'd be purple or red, or green or something, because the colour was affected by phase.
This was linked to
This is a
colorization,
pneumatic.
wasn't it? Yeah.
Sorry.
This was linked to your colorization, wasn't it? This.
Oh, I used these Sony pneumatics. This is an 1810 on the left. I can't remember, 2630, I think the right hand one was. They could record 525, 405, 625. I found out they could do 405. We use them for getting the color from the 525 Betamax tapes that Ian Levine got from somebody in Canada who had recorded a transmission from an American university, and dubbed it onto another Betamax in 525, which came over to us, and I had to convert it back into 625 when I wasn't doing something else, and I stuck it onto a pneumatic, and then I copied it from a pneumatic onto a 1-inch and did the recolorization of John Pertwee's. This is a pneumatic of the sort that I used when working at Leamington Lane in Nottingham, in the news broadcast department, the electronic news gathering thing. And you'd have to slap these tapes in very, very quickly. When it was you have the talking head news person saying, and now we have news from something, and here's the video, click, and we'd be running. These machines did not need lockup time. You hit the play button and the pictures were there. In the days of the quadruplexes, you need 10 seconds for the pictures to lock up. In the days of the 1-inch, you could get away with 3 seconds, but you'd really try not to. But with these things, you oh, there's the fish fryer again.
There's a fish fryer.
That's a quadruplex. They would take a lot of fiddling, because there's no computing in this at all. This was long before any digital systems had been invented. So everything had to be done by mechanical arrangements of things like the position. This is made by another company. This is an RCA TR70C, particularly this machine. No, it isn't. It's an Ampex. It's just got, there it is. That's the RCA, it's got Memorex tapes on it. And there were other companies that made those things. On the left is a can of Cold Clean. Yay! And oh yes, there's I just noticed there's this is doing an edit, a mechanical edit as well, because that thing sticking out the side there is is a microscope.
Yes.
So somebody has been copying that, chopping that as well. There you go.
So there you go. This is a bit like, this is your job. This is your life.
Oh, it was, yes.
Well,
it was a strange job. You'd work 12 hours a day, 12 hours a day on a Monday, and then you'd be off all day Tuesday, work 12 hours a day Wednesday, be off Thursday and Friday, then work 12 hours a day on a Saturday and Sunday, and then be off Monday, on Tuesday, off Wednesday, on Thursday, Friday, and then off the weekend. That was called the Alexandra Palace shift. And shift 1, I was in shift 1, hardly ever saw the people who were doing the other days. They were shift 2. And occasionally you would wander in on the wrong day, and there were these strangers walking about in your job. It was really disturbing. And there were 8s, 10s, and 12s. Starting at 8, starting at 10, 12s. 10s are the good one, because it was nice and short. Because you always went home early, and 12s you had to wait until the weatherman had finished, and you played good night.
Well, there you go. Well, here's our epilogue. Our close down. We won't do the national anthem or anything. We won't do. And I will say, remember that warning they used to say, and remember to switch off your plug socket before you go to bed. Remember that bit?
Oh, indeed, yes.
Yeah,
but I hardly heard that, because I'd be spooling the tape off as fast as I possibly could. And the hope was I could get the tape off the machine and put it into the box and turn the entire room off before the end of the national anthem. And I could do that most often. That was most satisfying. And
Well, I
then
hope
go and catch
everybody's
late night transport.
Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed a little bit of a touch of the magic of Doctor Who, the magic of the BBC, the magic of it all dovetailing together with one of our panelists, Simon Anthony. So thank you, Simon, for doing that.
Pleasure.
Obviously, I know we will continue our talks about Doctor Who and have our battles as the contrarian v Brendan. But thank you very much, Simon. I've enjoyed that.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Well,
Bye
I
for
hope
now.
so. I mean, people have said so. Cheerio, bye, everybody.
Bye.